Hi, welcome to the Durham Pre-K Family Information Session. My name is Alex. I'm the Durham Pre-K Manager at Child Care Services Association. And we're so happy you're here. And before we get started, we just want to do some webinar housekeeping. We are recording this webinar. A link to the archive of this webinar will be posted on our website, durhamprek.org, for anybody who missed the webinar or who'd like to watch it again. This is a listen-only webinar, so you will be muted while the webinar is in progress. You can ask questions by typing them in the Q&A box. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If you would prefer to ask your question directly to the panelists, please raise your hand and we will allow you to ask your question. A poll will populate at the beginning and at the end of this webinar, so we will launch our poll now. So on a scale of 1 to 4, please rate your knowledge about Durham Pre-K. 1 being poor, 2 fair, 3 good, and 4 excellent. I'm going to just wait for everyone to do the poll. Grace, are they coming in?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so are we ready to move on? All right, thank you for doing that poll. So here's our agenda for the webinar. We're gonna start with brief introduction of who's here presenting. We're gonna do an overview of Durham Pre-K. We're gonna review the Durham Pre-K application. And then we're going to allow all pre-K partners to provide some specific information about their programs, and then we'll leave some time for the Q&A at the end. So here on our panelists are our pre-K partners, Child Care Services Association, Durham's Partnership for Children, Durham Public Schools, Durham County, and Durham Headstart and Early Head Start representatives are here today to present and answer your questions. Next, we will do an overview of Durham Pre-K. So Durham Pre-K is Durham's local investment in high-quality early childhood experiences. Durham Pre-K enhances existing pre-K seats and expands access to all 4-year-olds living in Durham County. Children in Durham Pre-K must be 4 on or before August 31st of 2021 and a resident of Durham County. Durham Pre-K's calendar. So most Durham Pre-K classrooms do follow Durham Public Schools' traditional calendar, with the exception of Holt Elementary and Pearsontown Elementary, which operate on Durham Public Schools' year-round calendar. I know that there's already some questions about next school year and whether classrooms will be open, and we just wanted to share that we are working with school leaders and monitoring the guidance from health and safety experts to plan and prepare for the 2021-2022 school year. Durham Pre-K partners' #1 priority is to ensure the health and safety of the children and staff at each site. Our pre-K hours are, all sites operate on a 6.5-hour school day. Durham Pre-K sites typically start at 8:30 and run until 3 p.m. or from 9 to 3:30, but times do vary by site. And so we ask that you check with individual sites for their hours. And you can see all our individual sites on our Durham Pre-K locations webpage on the Durham Pre-K website. Wrap care. Care outside the preschool day is called wrap-around care. Wrap-around care is a separate service from preschool and is neither guaranteed at every facility nor free. Individual preschool providers will determine whether they have the staffing to host wraparound care and for what hours. Durham Pre-K's website has wraparound care information for families. Subsidy or scholarship assistance may be available for qualifying families and seats. Now we're going to talk a little bit about Durham Pre-K's application for next school year. The Durham Pre-K application allows family to complete one application to be considered for all publicly funded pre-K seats in Durham County. The application will be available online on the Durham PreK website at 10 a.m. on February 15th, 2021 at durhamprek.org. For the application to be complete, there are some required documents. We will need birth certificate, proof of address, and proof of income. It's 1 month's worth of income for the entire household. Other documents may be requested when completing the application. For examples of these documents, please visit the Family FAQ page on the Durham PreK website. Now we're going to move on to Durham PreK classroom information. All Durham PreK classrooms have the following: lead teachers with a North Carolina birth through kindergarten teaching license, equitable teacher pay, high quality research-based pre-K curriculum, play-based learning, professional development and coaching for teachers and directors, support for strong family engagement, and a 4- or 5-star license from the North Carolina Division of Child Development and Early Education. There are Durham PreK classrooms across different types of programs. So when you are completing a Durham PreK application, you are applying for seats in the following types of pre-K classrooms: Durham Public Schools, Durham Headstart, and community-based licensed programs funded by NC PreK and/or Durham PreK. To find more about these locations, I believe in the chat box, we will have a link to the site locations page of our Durham PreK page. Now we're going to hear from Durham Public Schools, and they're going to provide you with some more information specific to their program.
Good morning. Durham Public Schools offers several types of classrooms, including Title I seats and tuition-based seats. There's no income requirement in order to access DPS programs. For families who want to be considered for a Title I classroom, your application needs to be submitted by May 14th, and children who demonstrate a potential academic need on a developmental screening would be prioritized for those Title I seats. Families will be completing the developmental screening by phone this year since we can't be in person together. Screenings will not be held in person this spring.
Thank you, Kelly. Now we're going to hear from a representative of Durham Headstart.
Good morning.
Alex, I'm so sorry. Before we begin, there was a specific question for Durham Public Schools about what
Okay.
is Title I.
Thank you.
Do you want me to answer now?
Yes, please.
Sure. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of those questions. So Title I is a federally funded program. So it's more related to how those seats are publicly paid for. But technically, any child could eventually be considered for a Title I seat. These are the classrooms that are in the elementary schools. So we do prioritize children that demonstrate a potential academic need, but you could continue to be on the wait list and eventually be considered as long as we have a completed developmental screening by May 14th.
Thank you, Kelly. Brittany, are we ready to move on to Headstart? Okay, thank you. So now a representative from Durham Headstart will share more information about their program.
Good morning. Durham Headstart. Families must submit the following information: prior monthly income, earned and unearned, 2020 W-2 or a tax return, a copy of your 1040, insurance/Medicaid, immunization. There's no deadline to apply. Families are encouraged to apply early to leave times for revisions, to submit missing documents, and to be considered for all pre-K slides. We're in the process of rebranding, and our website is gonna look a little different, and I will provide that information at the end. If you go to our CHTOP.org, you will be redirected. The new name is going to be Families and Community Rising.
Thank you, Shirley. Before we move on to NC Pre-K, Brittany, is there any specific questions for Head Start that you would like Shirley to address?
I don't see any specific ones for Head Start, so we can move to NC Pre-K.
Thank you. So up next is NC Pre-K representative, Grace, to provide more information about NC Pre-K.
Hello, everyone. Like Alex said, I'm Grace Smith, and I am with Durham's Partnership for Children. The partnership is the contract administrator for NC Pre-K in Durham County. So to be considered for a slot in NC Pre-K, families must make less than 75% of the state median income. Some families with incomes over this requirement may qualify if they meet other priority criteria. And so some of those priority criteria include children with disabilities, children in foster care, children experiencing homelessness, military families, children with chronic health conditions, and children with limited English proficiency. And when you're filling out the application, a declaration of your child's citizenship is required, but your citizenship status does not affect eligibility for the program. And there is no deadline to apply for NC Pre-K, but families are encouraged to apply early to leave time for revisions, to submit any missing documents, and be considered for all pre-K slots.
Thank you, Grace. Brittany, before we move on to Durham Pre-K, I'd like to.
So there were a couple of questions. I know that we have our Q&A scheduled at the end, and we'll get to the bulk of the questions then. But there were a couple of that I think people may have missed if they logged in a little late about is there more than one application that families have to apply? That was a common one. And then there were a couple questions about the differences in programs, but I believe we can get into that part at the end.
Okay, and just to answer that one question is that there is one Durham Pre-K application for all programs that are being presented right now. And that application will be available on our website, durhamprek.org, February 15th at 10 a.m. So I will answer that. And we will talk a little bit about the programs that you're applying for after in the Q&A session. But they are inclusive of the ones that you're hearing now, Durham NC Pre-K, Durham Pre-K, classrooms at Durham Public Schools, and Durham Headstart. So up next will be Katie with Durham Pre-K.
So for Durham Pre-K, all children living in Durham County who will be 4 years old on or before August 31st of this year are eligible to apply. So the program will be free for families with a gross annual income below 400% of the federal poverty level. And just to explain a little bit about that 400% of the federal poverty level, for example, in a family of 4, is a little bit over $100,000 a year for your gross annual income. And for families that have annual incomes over 400% of the federal poverty level, the parent fee will be 4% of your gross monthly income. And then there's no deadline to apply for Durham Pre-K, but we do encourage you to apply early to leave time for revisions, submit missing documents, and to be considered for all pre-K slots.
Yeah, and I think potentially that question, Brittany, about the apply is that you don't have to apply for these programs separately. It is one application and it's a rolling admission. And there are no deadlines for apply because we have a rolling admission application process. The only exception is for Durham Public Schools, is that this one Durham Pre-K application must be submitted by May 14th and have your developmental screening completed to be considered for those Title I spaces. And so I think that's can be sometimes a little confusing, but it is the same application and these are the programs that you're applying for. Thank you, Katie. So next, we have a Durham Pre-K information desk. And so this information desk To reach it, you call 1-833-PRE-K-EDU or 1-833-773-5338, or you email prek@childcareservices.org. You can call to schedule a virtual application appointment, call to ask questions about the application process, ask questions about documents needed for the application process, or if you need support completing the application, or you know someone that needs support completing the application in a language other than English or Spanish, we can find that support. And Allie is our Durham Pre-K Information Desk Specialist. And Allie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, good morning. I'm Allie Brown. If you ever give a call or an email, it'll likely be me on the other end, and I'm always happy to help. And I look forward to speaking with you if you reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Allie. Well, we went through the slides pretty quickly, and that's going to give us a lot of time to answer all the questions. So please enter your questions in the chat box or Q&A box. If you prefer to ask your question, you can raise your hand, and I believe that.
Good morning. Let's go through the questions in the Q&A. I've been looking at them as well as the chat prior to us allowing folks to raise their hand and unmute. Okay. So I am Jamaica Wells with Durham's Partnership for Children, working with the NC Pre-K program, just so you all know. One of the big questions that I've seen a couple of times was, do they have to be potty trained for pre-K? For the NC Pre-K program and those program locations, yes, they do. Kelly C. and Shirley, if you all would like to answer on behalf of Durham Public Schools and Durham Headstart, I would greatly appreciate that.
We prefer for Durham Headstart that children are potty trained, but we are willing to assist parents in reaching that goal.
For the Title I seats in the Durham Public Schools, children should be potty trained. If there is a situation around medical needs, then you could have a conversation with the classroom teacher. And sometimes during the screening phase in the spring, perhaps your child is not yet potty trained, but a few months later they might be. That might shift. So just stay in communication with Allie if something changes and you need to change something on your application.
Kelly C., I have another question specifically for you. I have a few, so I'll call you back once we get to the next ones. If I already work at an elementary school that hosts a pre-K program, is there a way I can request a location?
That is a very common question. In the past on the application, I believe there is a place where you can indicate a preference for an NC Pre-K site or Durham Pre-K site. I don't know if that will be on there again this year. Can we confirm?
Yes, it will.
So you will notice that there are not Durham Public Schools elementary schools on that list. You will see the Whitted School, but the elementary schools will not be on that list. If you do have a family member or there's a sibling at one of the elementary schools, when you complete your phone screening, you can let the screener know and they can note your preference at that time, because all of those screenings will go to Durham Public Schools. Now, we can't guarantee placement at your preferred site. Number one, because not every elementary school yet has pre-K, and number two, because of limited seats. However, whenever possible, we do try to take family preferences into account. Primarily, we would first try to place you at your base school, and if there's no pre-K there or there's no available seats, we would place you at the next closest school, unless you have indicated a preference. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much. Is any 1 month in, is the 1 month income any month in 21-20? No, it is the most recent month's worth of monthly income. So if you are applying in February, ideally January's monthly income would be, that would be the most ideal information that we would ask for. If you apply later in the month where you might straddle a month to make a month's worth of income, that will be perfectly okay. How do we get a developmental screening? You would apply for the program and schedule a time to get the developmental screening done. This question was asked several times and it was also already answered, but I will reiterate, are the applications for Durham Headstart, DPS Title I and Pre-K all separate? They are not. This is one application that you can access on durhamprek.org. Shirley, I have two very good questions regarding Head Start. How is Head Start different? Who is eligible for Head Start? And I also, to tag on to that, I also had a question, what program for 2-year-old, for my 2-year-old, and where can I apply for that?
Okay, Durham Headstart has early Head Start classrooms, so you could apply for your 2-year-old at Durham Headstart, early Head Start. And the other question was what, Jamaica? How are we different?
How is Head Start different and who is eligible? Which is kind of, I would think, about the same question, just worded differently.
It pretty much is. The child has to be 4 by August the 31st, a Durham County resident. We provide comprehensive services. We have family engagement specialists that works with the families on completing a goal or working towards a goal. The income is just a little different. Like with Head Start, we do 12 months of income, which would be part of the last year. And that's why it was stated 2020 W-2s. And the example that Jamaica used, we would ask for, if you applied in February, we would ask for your check stubs for January, but we will also ask for your last year's income.
Shirley, can you talk about the eligibility of the income for Head Start, please?
So the eligibility for Head Start, we have a earlier point sheet. So you get additional points for certain things. For an example, a teen parent may get additional points. We have what is categorically eligible if you receive public assistance, if you are homeless, if there is a foster care, then you would automatically be categorically be eligible for the program. Did I need to add something?
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there an upper income limit for any of these programs? For the NC Pre-K program, if there is, if there are no additional risk factors, then 300% of federal income levels would be the upper limit. Shirley, if there is a upper limit for Durham Head Start, please let me know.
So Head Start takes 10% over the income guideline if there is a concern with a child. If they have a IEP or IFP, then they would be considered for the program.
For Durham Public School, for Durham Pre-K, all children would be eligible if they are 4 years old and are Durham County residents. They would simply potentially have a sliding scale fee. Okay, Kelly C., will there be a tuition-based class at Pearsontown this year?
Not that I know of. The Durham Pre-K website should have all of the participating sites, including the elementary schools listed. If there will be additional classrooms in the future, those would be added to that location. But as of right now, there is one Pearsontown classroom that has Title I seats, but there are no seats that you could pay tuition for at Pearsontown. The schools that are run by DPS that do have some of those tuition-based seats are the Whitted School, Sandy Ridge, Spring Valley, and Hillendale. But at any point that could change. So again, we can take your preference into account if you have a preferred school. But classrooms do shift, and that could be the case for sites with NC Pre-K or Durham Pre-K seats as well.
Kelly, please stay unmuted because the next question is also for you. Do children with an IEP automatically qualify for Title I, or do we need to complete a new process for enrolling?
That is another excellent question that comes up a lot. Children with IEPs do not automatically get placed in Durham Public Schools, partially because it's becoming really common now for children to receive services, and we just don't have enough seats for every single child at this point. And there are children with IEPs that receive their services in other locations all throughout Durham. So your child would continue to receive their services no matter where they are. But if it was determined by your IEP team that the best placement for your child with an IEP should be in a Title I classroom, there are some cases when the IEP team makes that decision, but that would go through the EC program instead of through this application. So what they recommend is that all children complete this application, and you also would communicate with your IEP team. I hope that's helpful, but if you have further questions, it would really be good to communicate with your case manager.
Wonderful. A familiar name. Do I have to apply for all of these programs to be considered? So you do have to apply and submit the specific documentation if you want to be considered for that specific program. So let's say the application covers multiple programs, but you are only interested in one of those multiple programs, then you want to make sure that you complete that application and submit the documents that that specific program is requesting. And complete the specific required things that that program needs in order to consider your application. For example, if you specifically know that you want to apply for Head Start, you want to ensure that you submit your W-2s and or tax information with your application so that you can be considered for Head Start. For NC Pre-K, you want to make sure that you submit your most recent month's worth of income, those kinds of things. Here's a great question, and anyone is more than welcome to jump in and answer this question. Will children be required to have COVID-19 vaccine for the upcoming school year?
So for Durham Headstart, I have not heard that that is a requirement. However, we are doing virtual at this time. Our classrooms are not full. We have some kids that are doing virtual, and we have a few in person. But when they arrive at school, they have their temperature taken. Then they go to like the wash station and wash their hands, and their temperatures are taken twice throughout the day. And we kind of prefer that the same person that brings the child is the same person that picked the child up. They do stay in their car, and after we get the results from the temperature, that determines whether or not the child will be able to stay that day or will have to go back home.
And I can add to that question. Currently, our pre-K sites are following regulations and rules from the DCDEE, our parenting state agency. And you can check out the Child Care Strong guidelines. And at this time, there are no rules or recommendations around requirement of the vaccine for children. And as someone put on the chat, as of now, there's no approved vaccine for children, but we are, I know that we stated this in the beginning about reopening. We are in talks with our state agencies as well as local leaders about what the start of the school year would look like. And we will make sure to communicate that with you all when you apply of what that will look like. But right now, we don't have those answers just yet.
Great. Thank you. Kelly C., are charter schools also going to be on the list of public schools?
That's another question that comes up. Charter schools at this time don't, I don't believe they're offering pre-K in general, but they're at this time they're not using this universal application. And I also saw a couple of questions about Holt and Pearson Town. And those are the year-round schools. I'm seeing a lot of questions about whether it's the magnet application or this application. You would use this application, the magnet schools for K and up. I think that's already ended. I think that time frame has already passed, but you could still, your child could potentially be placed at a magnet school that has pre-K, and this is the application you would complete for that. The only exception is George Watts and Moorhead Montessori, the two Montessori elementary schools. They don't have any Title I seats, and they use the magnet application, which, like I said, has already passed.
Ellie, there was also multiple questions about if a family has a sibling at one DPS school and they want their child to either attend the same school or one nearby. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I really wish that we had enough seats for everybody because there's a lot of siblings. So for example, I'm seeing people named Pearson Town. There's a separate EC classroom just for children with IEPs and significant disabilities. Then there's a Title I classroom there that is blended. So there's some seats that are reserved for children with IEPs. And so the remaining seats, there's only 12 possible seats that could be filled. And we have a lot of families applying for pre-K through this application. So say it's in the ballpark of 1,000 to 1,200. That's a lot of families. So unfortunately, we have very limited seats. Again, you can share your preference. And if we get to your child's name on the list, we'll do the best we can to keep families together. If we can't place them at the same school, we would place them as close as possible. And I don't think anyone has said this yet, but if you get offered a placement that you don't prefer, you're not obligated to take it. It's not like the magnet application for DPS, where if you decline the spot that you get through the lottery, then you're out. That's not the case with this. If you don't get the one you prefer, you could decline it and stay on the wait list. You might get offered a slot in another program.
Thank you so very much. Are there different start dates for different facilities? For the 21-22 school year, there will not be different start dates as of right now. However, many of the programs do staggered entry. So it may be that your child might be on a Tuesday, Thursday schedule to attend, and another child may be on a Monday, Wednesday schedule to attend until all of the classroom has become acclimated to going to school. The program that your child is assigned to would and let you know if you are on a staggered schedule and when you would be expected to attend school. How do you assign the kids their preschool? Is it based on location? So for the NC Pre-K program, we are definitely looking at MC Pre-K and Durham Pre-K. We are looking at parent preferences. Although we cannot guarantee preference, we do look at preference and try to place within a preferred location to the best of our ability. Secondly, we are looking at location of either your home or work address. We do ask that question if you are placed at a private site. Which do you prefer, which address you prefer, either work or home, and we ask you to put that address into the application. So we do look at that information. Shirley with Head Start, do you mind speaking up? And then Kelly C, if you do not mind speaking up. I believe that you did touch on this earlier, but maybe a reiteration would be helpful.
So Head Start looks at preference, but we also basically select according to the zip code to remove any barriers since we do not provide transportation.
Wonderful, thank you.
I did already speak to some of this, but first what we do is we screen all of the children who have a completed application by May 14th. As long as you have that application in by May 14th, we could still do the developmental screening after that, but any application submitted after May 14th, we would not be able to include you in this pool. So we'd screen all the children. It's not first come, first serve for any of these programs. Once we've screened all the children, then we would sort that list and prioritize children that demonstrated a potential academic need that's higher, and then we'd move down the list until those classrooms are full. And then when we consider where to place a child, I did already talk about that, but it would be base school first if possible, and if not, the next closest school, and whenever possible, if there's a preferred school, we would try to take that into account.
Tamika, could I jump in to answer a question that I've seen pop up in the chat quite a bit?
Sure.
So there are a couple of questions regarding like what programs or classrooms are there for children who may be advanced or gifted? And we do not have a particular program per se. However, our teachers do provide the developmental screening in the beginning of the school year, so that way they can differentiate their instruction and provide educational opportunities that meet the needs of all children.
Thank you so very much. That was a question that was on my list. What is the difference between all the programs? Income? The difference is eligibility criteria and location between the different programs. Otherwise, they all have to have BK licensed teachers. They all serve children in Durham County. They all serve 4-year-olds in Durham County, actually, and follow a specific curriculum and have a developmental screening tool and ongoing assessment tool that is used to further enhance the child's experience in the classroom.
And one resource that you can view on the Durham PreK website is the Why Durham PreK page, and we do have more in-depth information about each program offering, as well as testimonials from parents and teachers as well. So if you still have questions or would like to in this virtual world lay eyes on what the classrooms look like, I encourage you to check that out.
Great, thank you so very much. This answer is a little bit specific. This question is a little bit specific, but I know that we get this question often throughout application process. And so I would like to go ahead and read it and have an answer to it. My job has overtime at this time. However, it is not always available. If my application is submitted and reflects overtime, will my income be based on that amount or the amount that I make based on a normal 40-hour week? Now for NC Pre-K, if we are looking at your most recent month's income, then and that's what is on both check stubs, then we are guided through the program requirements to include overtime. However, there is a specific formula that we would use in order to calculate it. So we would not just automatically take an average as if that is the full year's worth. We would only count it for those two in the two-page the two check stubs or 3 or 5 or however many there are within that month for that amount of time. Kelly E, is there a special way that overtime is counted with regard to wrap care? Because I know that sometimes affects one affects the other.
Sure, that's a great question. And just to be very clear about why I'm answering this about wraparound care, it's a completely separate service from pre-K. Just like with public schools, before and after care is a completely separate program. It's the same thing with pre-K. So if you need assistance paying for that, there are programs available for that, and one of those is our scholarship program. So Jamaica is specifically asking how the scholarship program views overtime. Typically what we would do is try to establish in some documented written form that overtime is uncommon for you. It might just be a statement from your employer or some other way, and that would allow us to focus in on what typical pay looks like. And something that we would accept often in place of or as a supplement to pay stubs is an employer verification form. So as long as your employer can make a statement to that effect, we should be able to honor that.
Thank you so very much. Kelly C, do we need to get a Power School number for our pre-K students if we apply for Durham Pre-K?
This is another good question because that was a little confusing for folks this past year since everybody's enrollment switched to online with Durham Public Schools. So you should not have a Power School number if you have not been offered a seat. So you would use this application, and then if your child is accepted, you would receive a notification. And that's true for any of the programs. You'll receive your notification. I believe those will probably start going out in June. And then at that point, someone from the school will connect with you and support you with that enrollment. Now, if procedures change, that information would be on the website. The pre-K website for Durham Public Schools is dpsnc.net/pre-K, and there's a dash, PRE-K. And so if there were any changes to procedures, that would be where you could find that. But you don't need to search for any of that information. You don't need to enroll in advance, which is different from kindergarten. I believe with kindergarten, they want you to go ahead and do it. With pre-K, you have to be placed through this program or through the EC program. I hope that's clear. If you have further questions about that, you can call the pre-K office, and that's 919-560-3505. And I believe we're going to provide an FAQ follow-up to this, and we could include relevant links and phone numbers there.
Thank you
Jamika,
for
would
that.
it be?
Oh, I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
Jamika, would it be okay for me to jump in for just a second?
Absolutely.
Hey everyone, I'm Kate Elander. I'm Durham County's Early Childhood Coordinator. And I just want to say thank you all so much for joining for this presentation and asking all of your questions. I think it's probably clear to all of y'all, as it is clear to all of us, that working to provide a universal pre-K program here in Durham is a complex task. And there have been a lot of questions about eligibility and what the different programs mean. And I think it's important to understand that we use NC Pre-K funding and Head Start funding and Title I funding and other funding streams from our county and from our state and from any foundation partners who are listening to ensure that we can offer as many seats as possible to folks in our community, and also work to create classrooms that are diverse by race and by income. And so when we're talking about the different programs, usually we're not talking about an entire classroom of children just in one of those programs. We're talking about classrooms that include children that sorry, I'm trying to find the best way to say this, but we're talking about classrooms where each seat in that classroom might have a different funding stream or a different or multiple funding streams that help support the child in that particular seat. So you could have a classroom that has 4 families that do not meet any of the eligibility criteria for those publicly funded programs like NC Pre-K and Head Start and Title I. And then you might have 4 or 5 children who meet Title I criteria and 4 or 5 children who meet NC Pre-K criteria. And that's true in the public school classrooms, and it's true in the community-based classrooms. So I think it's just important to understand, ask for your grace and patience with this particular program, because we are working hard to be able to provide an equitable and inclusive universal pre-K program here in our community. And that means that you are submitting one application, but on the back end, all of these fabulous women and others are working hard to put those puzzle pieces together to offer you all seats based on eligibility criteria, based on location, based on sibling, based on a number of other factors. So it really is a big putting of a puzzle together. So I just wanted to provide that framing just in case it wasn't clear. The reason why it is so complex and you have so many questions is because the way this program has been set up is toward the end of creating as many pre-K seats as possible in classrooms that are diverse by income and race. So I just wanted to provide that framing.
Thank you, Kate. And I think to follow up on that, I think it might be helpful just to do some general application questions that I've noticed a lot in the chat and in the Q&A about just like when will we find out, how are they, you know, how are placements decided, how many seats are available. So I don't know, Brittany, if you think your team can best answer, but I think just going over that overview of that whole might help answer some of these questions and then go on to the Q&A.
And I want to say, because I know there have been a number of people who have said that their questions have not been answered yet, and they are coming in faster than we can get to them. So we are going to try our best to answer all the questions with the remaining time that we have. But I want to reiterate that we are collecting all of the questions and we'll have the answers posted on our website. So if we don't get to them during this time, we will make sure that they will be on the website and that you all will have that information. But yes, we can go over general. I saw quite a few questions about age and when a child's birthday and how that affects their ability to enroll.
Okay, so I'm happy to answer that question, as well as when we will find out. So first, children have to be on or before August 31st. So if your child is turning 4 on September 1st of 2021, then unfortunately, we would not be able to complete an application for the 21 school year pre-K. That is directly linked to the age for kindergarten, and it is a state legislative mandate versus something that we did erroneously on the local level, just so you all are aware. We are also unfortunately unable to do early entry for pre-K in those kinds of situations. And typically we send out notifications electronically in mid to late June. Children would start typically in August with the traditional public school calendar. That calendar has not come out yet for at last check, it has not come out yet for the 21-22 school year. However, that is typically what we are following with the start date.
Jamaica, could I jump in about notification? So when you apply, it will be through an online platform, and through that online platform, we're really excited about this change this year. We will provide notification and communications through that. So please make sure you double check your email address and spam when it comes to notification, because that is, or even just communications from our office, because that tends to kind of bottleneck sometimes.
Thank you, Brittany. I did want to specifically ask speak out to this question because we get this question a lot throughout the application process. For NC Pre-K, what happens if household income later increases to over 75% throughout the school year? For NC Pre-K purposes specifically, once you apply, we look at point in time. If you then want to make a change, like say, for example, your income has decreased and you want to make a change, then you would you would update your application accordingly. And we can do that through the pre-K line. Allie Brown, you all met her a little bit earlier, but you would be able to make that change through her at any point through the application process and school year. Will my son meet teachers face-to-face for evaluation or test to be qualified for pre-K? As of right now, I believe that we are doing phone questionnaires for the developmental screening. Kelly, please feel free to speak up. Kelly C, please feel free to speak up if that is something different. We did speak on how placements are made, but that is according to preference, eligibility, program eligibility, and location of address.
So
I'm sorry, go.
Did you want me to answer that real quick about the screening?
Sure.
when you complete your online application, towards the end of the application, there will be a space where you can indicate your preferred time of day to receive a phone call. Because these are going to be over the phone instead of an in-person screening, we're not going to set a date with you because there's going to be lots and lots of different people doing these screenings from different locations. Some offices are open and some are not. So what you would do is you'd indicate your preferred time frame for receiving a call, and then someone will reach out to you. And maybe you'd pick between 8 and 11, or you could say any time of day is good for you. And then below that, you'll put the preferred contact person, an email address where you can be reached, and your preferred phone number for receiving the call. Since some people will need to be calling from their personal phone, you may receive a call from a blocked number. And if possible, if there's some way you can set your cell phone, if you don't receive calls from blocked numbers, if you could temporarily make that available, or at least make it so that they can leave you a voicemail, then they could indicate when they can call you back. If for some reason there's some kind of disconnect and you're not receiving your call, you can reach out to Allie and she'll make sure that that we're aware of that. I hope that, did that answer the question, Jamika? Oh, it'll be whoever the person is that you indicate on your application that you want to complete the screening. That'll be the person that answers the questions over the phone.
Can I just hop in, Jamika, real quick?
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a lot of questions in the Q&A and in the chat about virtual learning for potentially next school year.
I was just about to get to that.
Okay, so can you just maybe address that, please? Because I feel like that would answer a lot of some questions. I've been trying to answer them in the chat, but yeah, please.
Yes. So as of today, the expectation is that children will be in person in the fall. However, if in the event that there will still be virtual learning, or that is something that is a requirement for the beginning of the school year, that will be communicated with all families as they throughout the process. We are working with state, federal, local governments, and school districts to try to reopen schools as safely as possible. And so all of that information will be communicated with families throughout the process and up to enrollment of the next school year. Would anybody like to add on to that statement?
I just wanted to, this was another question that is semi-related, but about next school year and the number of children who we are anticipating to support through the program. Right now, as I'm sure as everyone knows, things change day to day, week to week, and that is the same with funding. And so at this time, like, we can't specifically say the number of children because both local, state, and federal budgets are being finalized. So we appreciate your patience and in understanding that we are we're working hard to make sure that we prepare everything that we need to for the beginning of the school year. And like we said, we will make sure that we communicate any changes, any updates through the portal, like when you apply.
So I saw a question about applying for twins, and I wanted to just make sure that we answer this question for everyone. If you have, so for NC Pre-K, Durham Pre-K, and Durham Headstart, placement in that same program, likely in the same location, is ultimately guaranteed. However, it is not guaranteed if in the event that one of the children is eligible for Title I and one of the children is not eligible for Title I through the developmental screening. So I just want to make sure that you all are aware that that is something that could potentially happen, where one sibling could be accepted and one could not be accepted. Let's see here.
I'm just
I'm
going to do a time check. It's 10 a.m. Do we want to keep answering questions for a little bit longer?
I think maybe 5-10 more minutes.
All right, just making
Tamika,
sure.
could you speak a little bit? I know that there were multiple questions just around income, proof of income, unemployment. Can you speak a little bit more about one, the 188 number for support, and just answering those specific questions that a family may have?
Absolutely. I am looking. Okay, so for an independent, self-employed contractor, yes, a tax return would be acceptable for proof of income. If you have a profit and loss statement, that would be acceptable for income. Ideally, we would ask for all household income. So if you are working and receive paycheck stubs, then we would ask for those. If you are working and being paid under the table, we would ask for a employer letter, a signed and dated employer letter. If you are self-employed, then your tax information for 2020 would be sufficient. If you are renting a booth or location from someone, you could actually have them write a letter that states that that's what you are doing and on average what your income is. If you are receiving child support and you're actually receiving it, we would accept the documentation from the clerk of courts or a letter from the paying parent. If you are receiving a stipend or an allowance from someone that's not going directly to your bills, then we would accept a letter from that person stating that information. If all else fails, we do have a self-declare document that we can ask you to complete for it. And so that would be something that you would be able to obtain through Allie, and you would need to call the 1-833 phone number for that. Let's see here. For children who are turning 5 in September or October, as they're testing to see if they are ready for kindergarten, yes, if you go to the Durham Public Schools website under enrollment, there is a link for early entry into kindergarten, and that is the process that you would want to follow for that. I strongly suggest to spread your eggs in multiple baskets, and so still apply for pre-K along with doing that early entry into kindergarten process. Remember, at any point, you are always welcome to decline any opportunity that is offered to you. And so if in the event that you are accepted into a program that you do not want for your child, you would be able to decline that space and return to the wait list. There's a potential that another seat would become available for you at a later date.
And there was another question that I saw that came up about if a family had information on file from a previous year, what should they do?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
So if a parent has information on files, like say that they had a child application from the 1920 school year, should they apply again? Do they need a new application? What is
Yes.
the expectation there?
They would need to reapply again for the new child coming up for pre-K.
Jamika,
Mm-hmm.
just since you were talking about the early kindergarten consideration, I just want to make it clear to folks, because this comes up every year. It is a very convoluted, involved process, and it involves paying out of pocket for psychological testing, and it's a few $100s that the family would have to pay out of pocket, and the child would have to score extremely high in both academics and social skills. And so it's unlikely that the child would be approved. So like Jamaica said, in spreading your eggs, it would be good to both apply through this application if you're also going to try to do early kindergarten entry.
Kelly E., this is a great question that I believe that you could potentially answer. How does getting an IEP interact with the pre-K application if you don't currently have a case manager or IEP? Do I apply for pre-K, then contact DPS EC?
Do you mean Kelly E or Kelly C?
Kelly C. I'm sorry, Kelly E.
Okay. I was like, I can try, but I'm pretty sure.
My
Kelly
bad, my bad. I, you know, my apologies.
C.
It's all good. The process for getting your child a full diagnostic assessment in order to be considered for special education services is separate from this. While we do the developmental screening, that is not a diagnostic screening. It's just a general snapshot of your child's development at this time. And in order to get an IEP, it's a much more involved process. It's very individualized to your child. So I'm gonna just drop a link in the chat. If you go to that page and then scroll down, actually there should be a sidebar menu where it says preschool for exceptional children. That gives a little bit more information. And if you scroll down to the bottom of that, there's some phone numbers and contact information about referrals. In terms of interacting with this application, I believe some of the programs do weight children who currently receive services a little bit differently. Maybe someone with NC Pre-K or Head Start could speak to that, about whether that's one of the criteria, but not for Title I.
Thank you. So there's several really great questions in here, but I'm gonna go try and capture a few of them really quickly. Based on income, can the payment for pre-K be the same or more than childcare? It could potentially be the same, but it will not. There is a cap for the sliding scale fee, and so it typically there is excuse me, Kelly E., do you recall what the cap is currently?
I'm sorry, Jamaica, can you repeat that?
For the sliding scale fee, isn't there a cap for that?
There is actually, and I'll put it in the chat, there is a chart at the bottom of the enrollment page on the Durham Pre-K website that gives exactly where the limit is for 400%. So I will actually, I've got that pulled up right now, and I'll go ahead and place it in the chat, and hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
Yes.
If there is a co-parenting situation, can both parents switch between picking up and dropping off the child? We try to encourage staying within your bubble for drop off and pick up, and that is to help flatten the curve for COVID-19 in Durham County. And so if you are co-parenting and you're able to stay within your bubbles within the for the two parents, then, you know, by all means, we are able to make accommodations with regard to that. With regard to transportation, sites do not offer transportation. It is the responsibility of the family. There are a few programs, very limited number of programs that offer limited transportation on a fee-based schedule, and that is something that you would coordinate with the site that you are, if you are assigned to that site. But typically transportation is the responsibility of the families. If I have already applied for Montessori, can you give any information on how, when we might hear back about that application? I do know that the notifications are online. They are electronic, so you will get an email regarding that. I'm not exactly sure when. I believe it is March, but you would be able to get that information on the Durham Public Schools' website. Okay, let's see here.
And I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, and we apologize if we did not get to your question. Again, we will make sure to email out the FAQ sheet and have it posted on our website.
Is there any priority given to single head of household parent who receives no child support? For NC Pre-K, no, there is not. I'm not 100% if that is a part of the criteria or additional criteria that Headstart looks at. However, that is the answer. How can I submit documents for early Head Start? I'm not seeing a place for it. It states the application was open on February 4th. Shirley, that's a question direct for you. Shirley, how can I submit the documents for early Head Start? I'm not seeing a place for it. It states the application was open on February 4th.
So there is a link that the documentation can be uploaded into the system. Was that the question, Jamaica?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Where would that link be located? On the website?
I'm putting the information in the chat box. I am putting the rebranding name, which is Family and Community Risings, formerly CHTOP.org, Ms. Shaquanta Parker. I am also including her email address, who is the URSIA manager and does the selection for the program.
Thank you. I am his guardian. Will my income be looked at? We will collect the income, but we do not count legal guardian's income. We do, legal custodian's income, we do not count. We do count legal guardian's income. If the parents file separately, are both W-2s required for the application? If both parents are in the house, and that is biological as well as step, yes, we would need both, all household income for all parents, step parents, or legal guardians in the household. And I see that Kate is helping me out in answering this question, but transportation is not provided. It's the responsibility of the families.
Well, thank you, so Jamaica, for that Q&A. Again, thank you everybody for joining us today. We have taken note of all the questions, so we will be releasing an FAQ on our website that answers all the questions that we received today. We will also be posting additional informational videos that help answer some of these questions. And also we encourage you to call our Durham Pre-K information desk, and Allie can help you answer these questions as well. Can you please put the phone number in the chat?
Alex, we
team.
also have the poll questions that I'm
Yeah,
about.
I was going to get to that. And yeah. And so please note that the application will be available February 15th at 10 a.m. And please complete this poll that we are launching. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much.